Hi, and welcome back to my channel. Over the past few weeks, I've been very busy sewing several dozen masks for friends and family. And I've learned several tips and tricks that are very helpful. There are many different kinds of masks, and these are really just my favorite shape and fit. This is a free pattern I found online from Craft Passion. I'll go ahead and link it in the description box below. This pattern is to make the Olsen style mask. It is more face fitting and it comes in different sizes from men down to 3-year-old children. Here I've cut out the largest size, traced it onto some cardstock or some cardboard or even like an old cereal box or something. You just cut down the sizes and then keep tracing it until you have all of the sizes that you need. The best fabric to use for this is a non-stretch cotton fabric. You can find little fat quarters like this at the Dollar Tree, or I found this yard of marble fabric at Walmart for about $6. Make sure you wash your fabric beforehand and trim the edges if you need to. There is a right side and a wrong side to all fabrics. As you can see here, this is the right side of the pattern. When you're making your face masks, you want to pay attention to the direction in which the pattern on your fabric is going. This one stencil piece will make two different pieces of your mask to put together. So I use the one side to find a spot that I like, trace it out, then I flip the pattern piece over, find another spot that I like, trace to cut it out. I'm using a fine tip Sharpie to trace my patterns out, and I'm also doing it, as you can see, on the wrong side or the back of the fabric. Here the dark fabric makes it easier to see that when you flip over the pattern, you are in fact making the exact opposite piece. Now keep in mind when you are tracing and cutting these pieces, you want to leave some space around the edges of your pieces to allow for the seam, which is the actual line you are going to be sewing. So if you're sewing along this marked line, you want to leave some space. So every mask has an inside and an outside. So every mask has two sides. And one of these sides is two of these pieces sewn together. And in order to sew these two pieces together, you just place them together, wrong sides facing out, the right side of the fabric facing in, and simply sew along this rounded edge that you marked on your pattern. Here you can see the several different sides that I have sewn together. This allows me to choose what kind of mask that I want to make, whether or not I want it to have a pocket for a filter, and whether or not I want to use elastic or ties or whatever I have available to me to put onto the mask. Because this is meant to be opened up, I'm going to trim some of the excess fabric by the seam I made, and then this is to make one mask by putting two sides together. Now if you are someone who likes to wear a fabric mask to cover a regular surgical mask or a regular N95 mask, sometimes you want to have a filter pocket. I also know some people like to put their own filters inside of masks, so this is the option for you. You'll first want to start by sewing your two pieces together to form a side of the mask. Keep in mind that this mask will have a front side and a back side, and you will only be seeing the front side. This mask is not reversible with a pocket. For my mask, the Mario fabric will be the outside and the blue fabric will be the inside. Don't forget you're going to want to trim the edges next to your seams. Now, in order to create a filter pocket on your mask, you're going to want to take the inside of your mask. This blue layer is going to be the part of the mask that rests against my face, and the Mario print is going to be the part of the mask that shows. And I'm going to open it and fold down the edge of the fabric along the line that I drew to make the seam. If you're not sure which way to fold it, make sure that the seam that you drew with your pen is inside and hidden when you sew. Now you're going to want to open these up, and I use the top pointed seam to press the right sides together and smooth them along so it almost makes them one piece. And don't forget the middle curved seam here. And once you have your two sides together, you're going to want to sew them together to make your mask. Now I'll put the starting point behind the middle so that when I sew forward, I am sewing the seam of the middle of the mask down towards the way I'm sewing. This should make it so the top of the middle curved seam is laying one direction. So you just need to make sure to pay attention to the direction and repeat it. Then I'm going to flip the mask around and start from where I started the last time and finish off the top of this mask in the opposite direction. Now I'm going to complete the same steps for the bottom, making sure that the starting point for my first seam is going to lay the middle seam down the same way as the top seam. Here again, I'm also going to trim my seams just to make sure that when I flip this right side out, that there isn't any extra bulkiness in the edges. Here I'm just reinforcing this nose seam because it does get a lot of wear and stress on this actual part of the mask right here. So this just helps with the overall durability. Also, I personally don't sew in a space for the nose wires, but you could. Adding the filter pocket to a mask makes it less durable, and I personally don't add these to a lot of masks, but I do have a couple that I do use with filters. If you pinch the top here, it'll help the mask take its shape a little better, and ironing the sides flat also helps it keep a better shape. Elastic has been very, very difficult to find. What hasn't been difficult to find is paracord, and paracord works very great in certain situations. This is a great option for someone who can easily tie, like an adult or an older teen. It, however, is not the best option for some of the younger school-age kids who, if they do have to wear something like this to school, they're not going to be able to as easily tie such a good fit. Make sure you're sealing the ends of your paracord. Also, don't forget to remove the middle of the paracord, the thicker white cords, because this will make the paracord flat and it'll make it more easy to sew through. So here I folded in the edge of the Mario fabric and placed the paracord on top of it, and I am going to make a seam all the way down the Mario fabric. But just be careful not to sew the blue fabric, because then you will sew your mask completely shut, and you need to leave that open for the pocket. I'll also use ties on very young children's masks who can't put the mask on themselves anyways, and this usually helps to stay in place a little better. I always like to make sure to backstitch plenty to make sure any elastic or paracord that I sew on is going to stay in its place. Now for each of these sides, I always like to sew one way about 3/4 of the way, and then flip it around and sew the other way about 3/4 of the way. So both sides are basically double sewn. So here you can see that the edge of the blue pocket is lifted up to make sure that it stays away from this seam that I'm creating. Here you can see the pocket, and you can also see all of the seams and everything as it opens up, which is why this mask is not as durable as other masks, because all of the seams are exposed, especially when you're washing it. These are the ones you're going to want to hand wash and let air dry. Now you can also use any of the other methods that I use on the mask instead of the ties, like if you wanted to add the ear loop elastic because you have it, or if you wanted to use the thread through method and make the little multi-purpose loops so you could decide what you wanted to use on that. You can also do that with the filter pocket mask. So when you're using the individual ties for the adults, you're going to want to make each individual tie longer. I'd say between 14 and 18 inches. And you're also going to want to keep in mind that the ties that you're tying around your neck are going to be shorter than the ones that you're tying up around the top of your head, just by the length of where it's going. But you also need to factor into that if you're going to be making like a bow, like you're tying your shoe, you're going to need that extra space. So like I said, I like to put my own filters inside of the filter mask sometimes, and these are what I use. It is basically an air conditioned filter, and it's the advanced allergen ones that filters out particles the size of viruses. And if you remove the cardboard edging and carefully peel back the chicken wire almost that covers it, you will get what is left with a accordion style plastic paper type stuff. and I basically cut it down to the size of a mask and slide that in there, and I will just throw it away when I'm done. Now, because of the mask mandates here in California, I do believe that my daughter is going to have to wear face masks at school. And I think face masks are a good thing as long as they are practical. So I've been working really hard to figure out what is going to be practical for my child to wear to school. I like the practicality of the reversible mask. It allows for them to wear something different. It's not the same every day. Because a lot of the seams aren't exposed, it's very durable and it handles a wash and wear very well. Masks, I think, are going to become almost like a pair of socks, something you use that gets soiled and needs to be replaced. Especially in the summer when you're hot and sweating, the more moisture that your mask absorbs, the less it's going to work. And instead of saying that I don't believe masks work at all, I'm saying, well, maybe it's time to change your mask. So maybe for somebody who works, instead of wearing one fabric mask all day, you wear one and then you change it on your break, and then you change it at your lunch, and then you change it on your break again, and then you wear a different one when you go into the store after work. Or maybe for like my daughter, something like an ear loop elastic mask would be more practical for inside or when she has lunch, because it's more easy for her to take it off, and something like a elastic multi-looped one for when she's outside at recess, running around at lunch, playing in sports where it really does need to stay on because she's more active. And then this makes the basic reversible mask shape where you can choose what kind of fasteners you want to put on it, whether you want it to be the ear loops or the multi-loops, or if you want it to have ties. Now the multi-purpose loops are my absolute favorite. It allows you to use either elastic or paracord or shoelaces or just plain string, whatever you have on hand. So here I'm just turning in the edges of the fabric so that I can put the loops in, and as you see, they offer all kinds of comfortable, hands-free face mask wearing, especially for kids. And once you have your fabric rolled in, I like to pinch it shut, and then I will go ahead and iron it so it'll stay and I have a good crease. You can use anything you want to make the loops. I use elastic. You can use the paracord. You can use little pieces of ribbon or little pieces of yarn or whatever and sew it into the fabric. I basically cut them about 1 inch long and fold them in half to make the loop. And it's best to use 3 loops unless it's on a younger child, because if not, you're gonna have some puckering in the middle of the cheek where the mask goes. I'm just gonna fold the elastic into the fold there and then sew it all together. I'm gonna use a zigzag stitch on the elastic because it grabs a little better, and I will sew down the one way, back stitch at the end, flip it around and sew down the other way and back stitch at the end again, and I will stop in the middle to back stitch across that middle elastic as well. Sometimes it helps to lift and kind of guide your presser foot a little more. You see, I have to kind of force the elastic underneath the presser foot because the elastic is a great deal thicker when it's stacked up. When threading paracord through the loops, you're going to want to make sure that you're threading so that you can tie the top of your mask on top of your head. So the single piece should go up both sides and tie at the top. And for some of these smaller projects, I like to use my presser foot to hold the project in place while I am trying to do things like add the elastic into a fold or just straighten it out. Now my favorite thing to use with the multi-purpose loops, of course, is elastic, but specifically 1/8 inch flat elastic. But you're probably going to want between 24 and 28 inches of either elastic or shoelaces or something to be able to thread through the loops to wear. And here you can see the mask flips from green into a mushroom mask, into a green mask, and back. Now when you are using the elastic, I find the best way to do it is to thread down through both sides of the elastic and make the knot by the neck. And what's great about this is when the elastic wears out from repeated use and washes and wear and tear, you can just thread a new piece of elastic through it and you're good to go. Instructions for elastic ear loops are pretty straightforward. You want to take 7 inches per loop for adults and 6 inches per loop for kids. You want ideally 1/8 inch elastic is going to feel the best, the skinnier elastic, but this here is a 1/4 inch elastic and a lot of people will use it too. I wouldn't wear much wider than this 1/4 inch because it's very, very, very uncomfortable on your ears. You can, however, get an ear saver, and I think if you're going to get an ear saver, you might personally make the elastic loops on your mask longer to accommodate something like that. And this is basically just inserting the elastic in like you would the loops, except it's one elastic loop that goes end to end as opposed to 3 individual little speed bumps that you're just sewing over. And of course, one of the most important things is to not get discouraged when you are sewing. It is very easy to make mistakes, but all of the mistakes you make can usually easily be fixed by this tiny little tool here called a seam ripper. It's basically just a little pick with a little blade on it, and when you make a mistake, you just pick out every single little stitch that you did wrong and re-sew them. And that's basically how you learn how to sew, is doing it again and again and again until you get better. But also realizing that it is just a personal preference. A lot of sewing mistakes, if they're not really detrimental to the actual use of it, it's gonna be just an aesthetic, how it looks to you. If your seams are crooked or, nothing lines up right, it's how you feel about it. If it works and covers your face and keeps you safe, it's great. And you can try again if you want, and you keep trying again. You can make hundreds of masks. I personally want to try messing around with different fabrics because of the different changing seasons. Maybe some more breathable fabrics for the summer, maybe something that wicks a little nicer, or maybe something softer and warmer for the winter months that are going to be coming ahead. It's all just really a hit and miss here to find a personal preference for something that makes you comfortable, keeps you safe, and keeps other people safe as well. I also have my children to think about. They want to be able to go to school and they want to be able to do sports with other kids, and I think California is going to mandate that everybody has to wear a mask to do so. So it's easier to just get it figured out and help some of you that along the way that are maybe trying to figure it out as well. It's really all new territory for everybody involved, so we're just gonna try to make it work together. I hope this tutorial and some of these tips and tricks have been helpful for some of you guys, and let me know if you have any questions in the comments. I'll be happy to answer what I can. I wouldn't mind making more sewing videos. I'm not the most accomplished sewer, but I get the job done, and I'd say I do decently. I definitely have room for improvement, but there's plenty of masks that need to be sewn, so I'll have plenty of opportunity to get better. Thank you so much for watching, and it would mean a lot if you would subscribe if you like videos like this. Leave comments, let me know that you like videos like this so I'll know to continue making videos like this. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.